I don't care.
Who cut your hair?
Nobody. Yeah, the last time I had a haircut, the first George Bush was president.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. That's a good timekeeping.
Yeah. All right, so thanks y'all for showing up. I couldn't weasel my way out of this, so I downloaded some pictures this morning and talk to y'all about some of my trips. I've done 4 around-the-world trips on motorcycles. My first overseas trip, I bought a KLR 650 in Hungary, and this was in North Africa. No, that's not me, but there was a monkey in the Atlas Mountains, and I bribed him on my bike with a cookie, and then bribed him off with another cookie. But while I was riding over there, I was reading this book called The Long Way Around, about these whiny actor millionaires that were crying because BMW wouldn't give them free bikes or KTM or whatever. And I was like, I want to do that. So when I got home from that trip, I knew where there was a basket case 48 Indian Chief at. I bought that, put it together, and the next spring I shipped it to, I rode from Alabama to Canada, shipped from Canada to England, and took off on it. Crossed the Pacific, and got home about 23,000 miles and 6 months later. So there's the bike. That's me in Russia, in eastern Russia, the world's biggest Lenin head. There's still a lot of Lenin statues over there. Not many Stalin statues. He's not as well thought of. I don't think there'll be any Putin statues anytime soon either. But this was near the Mongolian border, and he's a Buddhist monk. And apparently he'd never seen an Indian before. And came out. And, people over there really like to sit on your motorcycles. And sometimes they ask, sometimes they don't. It's not a disrespectful thing in their culture. But over here it is. It took me a while to get used to people just wanting to sit on my bike without asking. I didn't mind him so much because, he's a monk. This was at a Russian.
You mind. You didn't want
They didn't even have to ask, these girls. Yeah, Russian biker parties. A lot of fun. Great people over there. I always tell everybody what's going on today. Don't hold that against the Russian people. They don't want this either. I got a bunch of friends I talk to all the time, and I can't go back there now until, I don't know how long, until all this blows over. There's another guy that sat on my bike without asking, but they had machine guns. But a lot of police checkpoints in Russia, going in and out of towns. And usually it was just, want to see your papers, but with me it was more of a curiosity, where are you from, where are you going? They always want to know how old the bike is, what's it worth, and can I do a wheelie on it? And they always ask to do wheelies, but obviously I couldn't do it on this. But really nice guys, and I would pull up to one to ask directions or something, and everybody over there is afraid of the cops. So when somebody approaches a cop voluntarily, they kind of back up and freak out over it. But once they realize you're a tourist, it's okay. So this was the Trans-Siberian Highway at the time. They're working on it. And I ended up having to put the bike on a train for about 800 miles because it was just swampland. There was a track for Jeeps, but yeah, it wasn't going to happen on this. The road as it was really bad on this bike. I snapped the front shock, bent the rear axle, the springs inside the rear of the frame, broke those and knotted them up into wads and made it a rigid frame. So it was rough riding on that bike. So after I finished that trip, a couple years later, I was like, well, I want to do it on a Harley, but I don't want to do it on a stock Harley, so I built a panhead chopper. And after the Russian roads on the first trip, I should have known better, but it was a lot of fun. Everywhere I stopped, people would, take pictures of it because it's not real common to see something like this over here. This is at Red Square. And I dipped down into Mongolia. Basically, the route was similar, but I made it as different as I could. Once you get to a certain point in Russia, there's only one road. Well, there's two, but one's all dirt, and then this one was, the one I was on was mostly paved. And I dipped down into Mongolia. There's one paved road in Mongolia. And after Russia, then I took a ferry over to Japan, and this was in Hiroshima. This was the A-bomb dome. It's the one building that was left standing that they left it as a memorial. And I spent about a month in Japan. When I first got there, I hated it because everything's very expensive, precise, rules for everything. And after being 2 months in Russia, where it's like the Wild West and anything goes. And once I figured out how to live there cheaply, I was there a month and didn't want to leave. But really nice people, had a lot of fun exploring the countryside there. It's hard to get used to riding on the wrong side of the road. But usually I'd draw a little arrow on my bike telling me to keep left. So after that, I decided to go more an adventurous route. So I took a 2003 Sportster and built what I call a dirtster. And this was on the border between Tajikistan and Afghanistan. There's a sign there showing that there's still landmines there. And so don't wander off the road, you'll get your leg blown off. And a lot of people there by this time, I'd been through Russia a good bit and spoke enough of the language to kind of get by. And I met this sheep herder in the area, and I was asking him about the landmines. He said, yeah, every once in a while a sheep will find one, and then, you got two halves of a sheep.
Holy shit.
This was in Uzbekistan, which, so on this route, I went through a lot of Central Asia, and because the roads there are really bad, but it's a beautiful place and real historic. This was on the old Silk Road, and this was like a fortress, and they were in towns that were about a day's travel apart for camel caravans back, during Marco Polo days. And these were big fortresses with the gates, and they'd let all the camels in there and then lock the gates and keep them safe from bandits through the night. And a lot of these are still standing, and really beautiful area. The countryside there is amazing with the mountains and stuff. This was, I think this was the highest point that I went on that trip. It was just shy of 16,000 feet. And I was in a country called Turkmenistan about a week and a half before in the desert, and I'd fried the alternator on the bike. So I had to, I went and bought the smallest battery charger I could find in Turkmenistan, and it was about this big, weighed about 30 pounds, and that's it strapped on the back of the bike. So I'd charge my battery at night and ride during the day, and I'd contacted a friend to meet me in Kazakhstan who was coming from Europe and bring me a new stator. And so at this point, the 2 nights before, there was no electricity in the villages I stayed at. So I was sitting here with a dead battery at, almost 16,000 feet. And I had a friend of mine before I left on the trip had given me a little solar battery charger that rolled up into a tube. And I was able to charge the battery about 1 volt an hour until it had enough voltage in it to bump start it. And I had to unhook my brake light switch because if I hit my brakes, it'd kill the motor. And I got to a village that somebody had a generator, and I put some gas in their generator, and they charged my battery for me. And this was on the going from Tajikistan to Kyrgyzstan, and it was miles and miles of no man's land between the borders. And I just crossed the one border. Those are the mountains that make up the border in the background. And I stopped, and I saw these 3 donkeys come running towards me. I just stopped to take a picture of the mountains. And it turns out they were 3 kids. They were probably 10, 12 years old. and they saw me stop, so they left their sheep herd and ran over to see me and look at the bike and everything. And really neat kids, and they had me try out their donkey.
Got you a new ride.
Yeah. It's a little bit wobbly and top heavy. If you've ever ridden like a BMW GS, you know what I'm talking about. But they were cool kids. I had some candy in my tank bag, so I hooked them all up with some candy. Kids everywhere love candy.
Chocolate, American chocolate goes a long way.
And this guy I met there, not far from that, it's a monument from a war, and there's a bunch of flags in the background. And he lived in the hut, and his job was to take care of the monument in the middle of nowhere, 100 miles from anybody, it seemed like. And he lived in the hut and made sure nobody messed with their war monument. Kind of a boring job, but when I stopped for a picture, he was, came out and talked to me, and I don't think he gets many visitors. So he was glad to talk to somebody, even though we couldn't communicate that well. This was on the Afghani border, just in a small village. The houses are made out of mud bricks, and so they're constantly repairing them. A lot of the eastern, Central Asia and North Africa is like that. So they don't get a whole lot of rain, but they eventually just kind of melt away when they do get rain. But I enjoy taking pictures of the local people and meeting them. This was a place I stayed at. There's no hotels there, so a lot of people will rent out a room to travelers and stuff. And there's, it's like $10 a night. They'll have some sort of a bedroom, or sometimes it was outside just on a raised platform, and dinner. And there's no trees there, so everything they cook, they used cow chips. And that's what they used to cook with, because it's so high up, there's not a tree for forever. It does make barbecue have a little extra tang to it. So after I left Central Asia back into Russia, I went on what they call the Road of Bones, which is 2,000 miles that goes to the farthest northeast point in Russia, a town called Magadan. They call it the Road of Bones because it was built during Stalin's reign, and they had they'd send people out there to these prison camps, gulags, and they made them build this big road. And so many people died because of sickness and the weather and all that building this road that is permafrost. So they couldn't dig in the ground to do graves, so they just lay them down and put the road over the top of them. And in 2,000 miles, they estimate 30 to 40,000 people are buried in the roadbed. Yeah, and this is one of they have new bridges, but I tried to do the old bridges when I could, and that one my front wheel fell through. Got it out okay, but still, it was nerve-wracking because I didn't know how much of the bridge was in that kind of condition. And this was a cop I met along the Road of Bones, and that was his Ural police bike. And it had like no kilometers on it. It was a brand new bike from the 80s. And they shipped it up there, but there's not a paved road for miles. So they never rode it. It just sits in their basement, and I guess they let tourists sit on it and pose for a picture. He was a really nice guy. I would have liked to have bought it just because it was a brand new cop bike, but I didn't know how I was going to get it home. And that's at the city limits to Magadan. Sorry the pictures are so small, but I'm not really smiling in this picture, and it's just because my butt had been beat for 2 weeks trying to do this road. So there's mountain crossings, there's swamps, there's river crossings, and then parts of it in between the bigger towns are graded, and they have a lot of truck traffic, and they throw up these huge clouds of dust. And so if you and they're doing like 30 miles an hour. And if you try to pass them, you don't know how many trucks are in front. There might be a convoy of 5, or it might just be 1. And then you can't see if anything's coming the other way. So it's really nerve-wracking to pass. In fact, a guy died doing that like 3 years ago up there trying to pass a truck, and another truck came out of the dust coming the other way. But it was far as I know, I'm the only idiot to do it on a Harley. So I got that going for me. This is another trip I did. I built this shovel head with a rigid frame and a Springer front end. And I did Europe, and then I went to the Middle East. This is in Georgia, which not our Georgia, but their Georgia, which is between Russia and Turkey. Really beautiful country, a lot of mountains. There's old castles up in the hills and stuff. And I still ride this bike over there. This and the Dirtster I both keep in Europe and ride them whenever I get a chance to get over there. This was a motorcycle repair shop in Turkey. So with the sidecar, they just flipped it up on its side and worked on it. And this was as I was going into Iraq. And you can see the mosque in the background. I'm wearing a T-shirt that says Infidel on the back. I did not wear that T-shirt while riding into Iraq. I just posed for the picture. And then I took the T-shirt off and rolled it up and put it back in my bag. I don't want to, piss off too many people. But the people there were really nice. So this is a repair shop in Iraq. And I was crossing the border. As you can see, the bike's not near as clean as it was in the first picture. But I'm crossing the border, and it took forever to get through the border. So apparently the tourism has not really taken off in Iraq. And I had to convince them that I was just a tourist. I wasn't in the Army. I wasn't a military contractor or any of that stuff. And they kept shuffling me around the window to window because nobody wanted to mess with me. Finally, they were like, okay. They stamped my passport and let me go. Then I had to get the bike in, and I had to go through the whole thing again with the bike at a different building. And I went to take off once everything was cleared. And those of you that know me will find this surprising, but I'm pretty lax on my maintenance on my motorcycles. That's why I'm pretty good at repairing, because I'm so bad at maintenance. And the clutch was dragging real bad. And I'm like, I'll fix it tomorrow. And, it's got a foot clutch with a jockey shift on it. And I started up, getting ready to leave the border. There's a big crowd of people around me. And I fire it up. I throw it in gear, and it jams really hard because the clutch is grabbing. I go to take off, and the chain pops off the rear sprocket, because when it popped into gear, it broke the chain adjuster off the frame, axle cock, chain came off. And so, I got like 50 people watching me. Get off the bike, pull the axle back, wedged a bolt in there and zip tied it in place, and just trying to tell people, oh yeah, it does that. So I asked somebody and found a welding shop, and these guys had a welding shop, and my first time ever in Iraq, I don't know how people are going to react to me, and they were just nice as could be, dropped everything, welded the bike back together, and it's still like that. I haven't fixed it properly since then because they're weld held. But they were fascinated because they were going to hold the piece of metal with a stick and then tack weld it. And I'm like, wait. And I pull out a pair of vice grips, and they're like they'd never seen vice grips before. They were fascinated by them. Yeah, and I felt so bad because I wanted to give them the vice grips, but I knew I was going to need them again. I'm on a Harley. And I made the mistake of going there during the month of Ramadan, which is a month where Muslims don't eat or drink during daylight hours. And so it was difficult. I couldn't really get food during the day. At night, as soon as the sun goes down, everywhere you at, they have a big feast. But because I was a foreigner and I ran into this a lot over there, I mean, they went and got me food, got me a big bottle of Pepsi, and wouldn't take a dime from me, fixed the bike, and really, really nice people. And the whole time I was in Iraq, everybody there was really nice. They were still fighting in the south. I didn't get down that far. This was in Iraq, the Grand Canyon of the Middle East. This road was built in the 1920s to get from Lebanon to, what's the other side of Iraq? From Baghdad to Lebanon. And a real pretty rough area through the mountains, mostly dirt. So this was in Iraq, and I'd stopped to take this picture because it had a sign that said, turn left to go to Baghdad. And so I took the picture, and I went to get back on the bike, and these two guys came from around here. There was a little wall with machine guns. They were Iraqi military guys. And they stopped me, and I, of course, I speak no Arabic or Iraqi or anything. And come to find out, this building right here was the local military headquarters. So they thought I was a spy and taking a picture of the military headquarters. So they were nice, so they thought since I was interested in the outside, maybe I'd like to see the inside, and they, with their machine guns, escorted me and my bike into the military thing. And they took me into a room and set me at this table, and some general-looking guy with all kinds of medals and badges and stuff sat across from me, and a half a dozen of soldiers behind me trying to, in case I wanted to escape or something. They're all got machine guns, so I'm sitting there, and he speaks English and asked me, you know, what country do I work for, and why am I taking pictures of their army base, and I'm explaining the sign. He spoke pretty good English, and they had taken my camera, and he's looking through the camera to see what else I'd taken pictures of, and I was worried about that because I took all kinds of pictures while I was there. I mean, I got a picture of a Scud missile that went into the ground and kinked over and never blew up, and you know, Army Corps of Engineers bridges and stuff, just because I'm interested in military things, and signs with landmines and all that. And he stops, he's looking at my camera, and he stops, he's looking at it and looking at me, and then he hands it to one of the other guys, and they're all passing my camera around. They're coming and looking at me and looking at the camera at the back of it to see the picture I took, and it finally gets around back to him, and I'm kind of straining because, you know, I'm wondering what picture it is. Well, he turns the camera around and shows it to me, and it was a picture I had taken in Turkey before I crossed the border. I stayed at this big fancy hotel, and I was joking. I said, man, this hotel has everything. I said, they even had an emergency turban repair kit. And I posted this picture online with the toilet paper turban. So that's the picture the Iraqi general found. And it was at that moment he realized I was not a threat to national security. I was just some idiot from Alabama. And their demeanor changed immediately. They were nice as could be, offered me, you know, yeah, water, you know, what can we do for you? And I look back at it now, I regret my decision to just say, well, can I leave? And they let me go, and I just jumped on the bike and hauled ass for the Turkish border and got out of there. Looking back now, I wish I'd have hung out because, you know, I couldn't have gotten any more trouble, I don't think. So I think that's all the pictures I downloaded. Yep. Is that it? Yep. So anyhow, short and sweet. I don't know if I went over time or not enough time, but if somebody does have a question about something, please, you know, go ahead. I don't know if they got a, I see a hand going, oh, more hands.
What do you use for your best seat cushion or your seat arrangement to sit on?
The Indian, I just had the stock seat. The chopper, mostly just the stock Harley seat. On some of my bikes, I use an air hawk. So it's got like little air bladders, and you can adjust the thickness. And those things will, I like Harley and Indian stock solo seats. But on like a flat seat, that makes a big difference and adds a good bit to a few hours to the day without being in pain.
What years were your trips?
Starting out in 2006 up until 2 weeks from now. I'll take off again. I haven't been able to go anywhere the last couple of years, but I'll make up for it this year, I hope. Uh-oh, Greg.
Doug, how did you handle the currency exchange for paying for things?
Usually, dollars work pretty good everywhere. If you don't have their local money, everybody will take dollars or euros. Mostly, well, starting off, 2006, a lot of places didn't have ATMs, so I just would carry cash and find an exchange. like in Uzbekistan, they have the official rate through the bank. They have their money is called a SOM, S-O-M. And so if you buy it through the bank, you get 1,800 SOM to the dollar. But if you buy it on the black market on the street, you can get 3,000 SOM to the dollar. But if you get caught, the cops will, take it from you. Yeah, and so 3,000 SOM to the dollar, and the biggest note they have is a 1,000 SOM bill. So you exchange $100, and you literally get a sack full of cash.
So did you have someplace on your bike, someplace where you stashed your cash?
Of course.
Where you hid it in case they tried to rob
Oh
you?
yeah. Well, I've never. The only place I've ever had anybody try to rob me was in Morocco, and he wasn't committed.
So you have been he wasn't committed.
He wasn't committed. He backed off too easy.
That's bribes, though, right?
What?
Bribes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have a $5 bill in my wallet and money in my pocket, and yeah. I mean, I could do a whole show on police. And especially in Ukraine, Russia's not too bad. Ukraine, Moldova, Azerbaijan, a lot of those countries are, they're all about the money.
Did you ever go to a country where you couldn't get a visa at the border, like you had to get it somewhere else?
Syria. When I left Iraq and was trying to get into Syria, and at that border, they wouldn't let me in. If I went to a different border that was like way far out of the way, I think I could have gotten in. Usually, though, I know ahead of time which country, like all the Central Asian countries and Russia, you need a visa for. But most all the other countries, you can just kind of show up. When I did Central Asia, all the stand countries, I got so lucky. A buddy of mine from Austria was the Austrian consul in Turkey. So I went to the Austrian embassy where he worked, and he drove me around, and I got visas for 6 countries in 4 days, and it usually would take a week per country. So, but it's all who you know. I've run into a lot of problems and known somebody that got me out of them like that.
So where are you going next?
Nowhere really interesting this year. I mean, as far as that, I hope to go to Ukraine this year, but I shipped the bike to England. I'm going to tour Scotland, go to the Isle of Man, and then head east from there and see if I can get into Ukraine or not. And then me and Polly, my girlfriend, we have a place in Bulgaria. That's where she's from. So we have a small hotel and campground for motorcyclists in the mountains. And she runs that in the summer, and I'll show up there sometime July.
Do you have a
Hey.
website or a video?
Kinda. Polly can give you the website. It's motosapiens.org. Like bike people, motosapiens, but it's .org, and that's the place for our camp in Bulgaria. But there's also a link there to a bunch of these travels and stuff. Michael.
Did you ever have a broad backfire on you, where somebody, where you were,
Broad backfire?
you shouldn't have given a broad?
No, they're pretty transparent about wanting a bride. Yeah.
Money, Mike.
Yeah, they'll hold your passport and do this. They'll say draft, they'll say dollars or whatever. They'll let you know.
I know for me, $5 didn't work. $5 didn't work for me in Russia. So did you ever have to really go up pretty high?
No, one time me and 2 buddies of mine were in Ukraine, and we were. In fact, I was on that bike. It was that same summer. And we passed a dump truck full of sand that didn't have a top on it, so it was blowing sand. And we didn't pay attention. We passed in a no passing zone, so these 2 cops pulled us over. And we were near the Hungarian border, so the one cop spoke. Well, my one buddy was Irish, my other buddy was Hungarian, and then me. And we're all on Harleys. And they kind of tried to separate us, because that's what they do. And I told the guys, I said, don't give them nothing. Let me talk to them. And they separated them, and they ended up, The Hungarian guy, they got 50 euros out of him. My Irish buddy got for 30, and I had a 5 in my pocket. That's all I got. And went back and forth forever because they wanted 100 euros apiece. And they're not going to shoot you. You argue with them. They don't want, want any headaches. They just want some money. So I look at it as a game. And when we were all said and done, then, they were out, we were out 85 euros, me only 5. And so we got on our bikes, we took off. And they also made them nervous because I started writing down their license plate number and what's your name, and that makes them nervous. And finally they took my 5 euros and let me go. But we get down the road maybe 20 kilometers and we get stopped at a permanent checkpoint, a little building in the middle of the road you had to go around. And so the guy wants to bring us in the office, and I look at my friends, I'm like, don't say anything. They're like, we ain't saying shit. We're letting you talk. So they take us in there, and like you could tell he was like the guy in charge because he had the biggest hat. And that's how they, in the East. Yeah, the bigger the brim, the higher the rank. And this guy spoke some English, and he's like, well, we hear that you guys broke the law back there. You passed on a no passing zone. I'm like, yeah. Well, there's a big fine for that. I was like, we already paid the fine to the officers back there. He said, well, how much did you give him? I said, well, we each gave him 100 euros. Because, this guy's going to expect a cut from that guy. And I argued with him, and I pulled out my pen and a piece of paper. And what is your name? And started writing. Okay, you can go. So somehow I would love to have been a fly on the wall during that conversation. No, they only gave me 85. He said he gave you 300. Give me mine.
Any more questions?
Oh, okay. Hey, thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug. They all volunteer their time for this show. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate Doug for doing this. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to take time that Doug is going to come pick one of the gloves here, donated in part through Stucco Leather, and a gift from me.
Stucco.
Oh, Stucco. Stucco Leather. Sorry. They're out there.
And I had a pair of those, and I loved them, and I lost them. So this is awesome.
This is awesome. So Doug is going to get a pair, and everybody that's helped us today, like Rebecca and the 3 guys that are doing our show, are going to get some Stucco leather gloves. Thank you all. But stay here. There's still more show.
I'm glad I did it. I got it.
A pair of gloves. Yay. Y'all stick around. We still have Bill Page next. Okay.
Oh, I'll get red ones again. That's what I had before. Yeah. Perfect.
Awesome. Oh, you can't hear with mine? Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. Thank you. You see, you didn't want to do it.
I didn't.
I know.
I did it just for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope it wasn't too bad.
No, you did excellent. You know what? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. That was loud. And it's Bill Page next.
Oh, look at that. I finished right at 11, just in time for you.
Yes, here you go. That's yours.
I don't need that yet.
Oh, okay. Not yet. And I'm gonna get your.
Bill. Good. Ready? That's good.
attention from all these guys.
Well, feel
That's
free.
all I have.
Hey, you know what? If you could show us up, that would say something about us.
Next time.
As soon as we get our board here, we'll go.
Introductions are in order. Yes, Rachel.
Cannonball, participant. John Newman's going to do a little bit with me too. We're going to kind of split it up.
Well, what we can do is put Mike on one of you, and then the other one can grab this one and just put it on. Yeah.
That'll work. They're getting me the dry eraser board here. We're just going your shirt.
Yeah. You can just clip it on, or you can run it. You can be official and run it up under and do all that. I'm gonna bypass your beard here. Oh, I can't stand watching the table. I'm sorry. They're just parts of me are just like, not as casual.
That's okay.
And that 33-year video pro with that part is not as casual.
Good. I'm efficient.
Get up just a little bit more, because if you wiggle your head, we'll just get your beard and not your voice. So there we go.
Test. Is that good?
Probably.
Just about. I was waiting for some.
He hadn't started yet, has he? The green CT-70 down there, you're going to be on this side of it.
All right. Appreciate you guys that want to learn a little bit about J model ignition timing, little valve timing to go along with that. I've got some markers, dry erase markers coming, so we'll just be a bit. My name's Bill Page, if any of you don't know. I'm just an enthusiast that loves old motorcycles. And I learned a lot about the J models from a lot of older guys in my club. My purpose today was to kind of show you guys the easy way to time a J model, twin or single, without any books, very little tools, and that's the way the old guys used to do it, and in the beginning, and it works. I've done 3 cannonballs, 5 different bikes between me and my son. John Newman's going to help me. He's done 4 or 5 cannonballs, and between the two of us, I can't tell you how many thousands of miles that we put on J model Harleys, J and JDs. Not that we know everything, we just learn things the hard way, what works and what don't work. So the, oh, I got stuff?
What? Not yet.
Oh, okay. So a lot of you know John runs Sagebrook Cycles. Awesome guy. He can get anything done for you. I don't do bikes for people other than family and friends. I don't have a shop. I don't have a business. So I have no vested interest in it. It just makes sharing what I have learned about J models. A lot of the older guys on these twins, what they used to tell me, and we'll get into the singles. They're harder than the twins. The twins are pretty easy. Once you get your pinion gear in, your cam gear only goes in one way and lines up. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Your valves work where they're supposed to when they line up. A single doesn't work that way. You have to time the valves and the ignition together. It gets a little more complicated. So I'd like to start out just with the twins. And you have to forgive me, I'm from Kansas and I didn't bring all the stuff that I needed. And it was too far for me to go back and get it. So I'm going to talk about Magneto ignition with twin motorcycles. What we used to do on those and what the guys used to tell me, no matter what you stroke, you got a motor and you have problems, they used to take a stick if the motor was out of the frame, and they'd run the piston all the way down to the bottom dead center, and they would make a mark. And then they would run the piston all the way up top dead center on that, and then make a mark on that stick. And they just used that, you'd carry the stick around with them. And then they'd take that stick and they would divide it into 6 equal increments. It didn't matter what the stroke was. And then from those 6 equal increments, they would drop the piston down one of those increments before top dead center, and they would set their ignition timing at that point. So what that shows, if with your pinion gears here, and you got your mark, and at top dead center, you would drop that your cam gear in at top dead center, so your cam gear lined up with this mark. Now here's your cam gear. Okay, you got that? So I can show you here what this would look like real quick. Okay, that would look, here's your pinion gear, here's your cam gear, and those marks would line up just like that, top dead center. All right, so then what you do is you back that piston off one of those increments, and that figures out to about 9/16 of an inch, normally is what it is. And when you drop that back at 9/16, this will roll back over about here. That's where you want to set your Magneto to fire. What I tell everybody to do at that point in time, so you don't ever have to go through this process if it's your own personal bike, is mark that. That's where you want your mark. So if you take that cover off, and you're on the fire stroke, compression stroke, all you got to do to check your timing, or if you want to change your timing, is line this up right here. All right? So at that point in time, once you get this correct, then you got your idler gears here. They don't mean nothing. There's marks on those. Very seldom do you ever get the same motor that the gears came with. And you don't really care what these are going to do. So then what you're going to do on your Magneto, and I'm going to draw a picture of your mag. Does that look like a mag?
Yeah.
I was going to bring one. So,
As good as that can be.
okay, this is you're going to install your cam gear on the back side. Here you're going to have your gear. Here on the front side, you got your lobe and your weights. What the old guys used to tell me at that point in time, when you got this set where you want to, they used to take a cigarette piece of cellophane, thin piece of paper works just fine, cut it in a little strip. And if you got your points here on your Magneto, you slip that piece of paper in there, and as you reach around on the back side of your Magneto and turn your cam, and it'll turn counterclockwise. Somewhere in the lobe, the magnet, when this comes in here, when it gets ready to fire, this paper will release from your points. At that point in time, as soon as the paper will move, will slide, you're ready. You want that motor to fire at 9/16 before top dead center. So hold that gear there, slip in this idler gear here. You'll have on a Magneto, you'll have this, you can install this one in. Some people say, well, you got to line those marks up. Those marks don't mean nothing on these two gears. You don't care.
Just idler gears, right?
Pardon me?
I mean, they're just an idler gear.
That's correct. Just an idler gear. So you have this one in. You reach around when you're at that point, when the paper releases from your points, and you install this gear. Sometimes you got to move one of those one way or the other to get this gear to go in for the teeth to line up. And what I always tell everybody, go to the advance to get it. Always go to the advance side, never the retard side. So in other words, if you have to retard it just a fraction of an inch to get this to slip in, that's the way you want to go, backwards. As simple as that. You put it back together, she'll run. You don't ever have to retard your timing or the Magneto. Just kick it over, she'll run. She won't run hot or run forever like that. I can't tell you how many thousands of miles I've put on a motor like that. It's pretty simple. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yeah.
Now, where the paper starts to move out is right as the points start to separate on the lobe.
Yeah, you'll have your felt wiper come in on your magnet somewhere right around in here.
Yeah.
And
you can see it on the lobe as it comes around and starts to reach the lobe. You can almost see it open up.
yeah, and you can, some of the older guys can probably guess at that, but I like it. I don't wait for the paper to pull out. As soon as there's no tension on it, as soon as you're turning on the backside with your hand, that gear, and rotating around, as soon as it releases a little bit, that's when you want it to fire. And then always go to more advanced, never more retard, because they'll run a little bit better. If you get them too far advanced, they'll overheat on you on a long period of time. That's simple. All it takes is basically to do that. If you're out on the field, on the road, you want to check your timing, you need a screwdriver and a wrench. That's it. So that's about all I got on that. And then John's going to talk about, which is a little bit more difficult due to the timing on a twin with the generator. Yep.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, everybody.
So the timing on the twin, is this working? Y'all hear me? Is it better?
Oh.
Everybody hear? Can you hear this? We just got to talk.
Good morning, everybody. So to time the ignition on a generator model, you start off by doing the same thing. I know it's not working. By aligning your pinion gear and your cam gear, okay, so that the timing marks are aligned, okay. And then what you do is you leave this double roll gear out, all right, and then you come through here, you open and you advance your timer all the way to the front. There's a lever that normally sticks out here, so you push it all the way forward. And then what you do is you rotate this gear until it comes around on the small lobe and it opens the points, and we're looking for about 60% open. So what I normally do is I'll set the points at 24 thousandths, like the book says, and then we're looking for 15 thousandths opening at the time this gear opens this set of points. So this is turning the cam up here for your timer, and so we're going to bring it around, and notice I'm turning it counterclockwise, so that when the points come around, when the cam comes around, the lobe comes around, it opens up this set of points about halfway, a little over halfway. Okay, and then what I normally do, can you hold this for me? Is I'll take my thumb and I'll grab this gear right here so it won't move. And then what I do is I take and drop this in, and then I clock it 1/2 at a time till it drops in. Let me do that again. So I'm trying it, and it's timed. It'll run. It's that simple.
Guaranteed.
Every time. And if you're off just a little bit, it won't care. It'll run. So, and that puts you right at about 30 degrees before top dead center. Okay, because remember, when we time the cam and the pinion, the motor is at top dead center, not the front cylinder, not the rear. You're about 22 degrees away from that rear cylinder hitting top dead. We're already 22 degrees past top dead center with the front cylinder, and that's the reason why when you drop this in with this halfway open, the point's halfway open, that you're going to be somewhere between 28 and 30 degrees before top dead center.
So the flywheels are at top dead center in the cases?
Yes.
Not for cylinder?
No. Right. So we're at top dead center for the motor, not the front or the rear cylinder. And that's when your marks on your cam and your pinion will align. So it's just that simple, man. Any questions? Damn, man, I'm good.
Shop dope number 1. All right? And in here,
Okay, here it is. So right here, it's showing where we advance the lever.
We're good with them.
Hey, you back?
We had a great ride.
but you don't want to force it. So that's why I put my thumb right here on that gear. I lock that down, and of course, with the like, and you just cross that gear one at a time. This is a great. If you guys have a J model or an early car, this is a great book. It's a lot of great.
I was going to say, I was lucky I found gotta use copy, but you gotta look for it. Yeah, yeah, but it's there.
Hey guys, any questions? All right, I'm off the hook.
Thanks. Thanks, John. I had John help me with those because I've run generators on a couple of my bikes, but I'm a Magneto guy, and that's what I like to run. John's a lot better at that other deal.
I like lights.
Okay, I've seen, like on the Cannonballs, we've seen a lot of the guys. 2016 was my first one. And they kick their bikes, and they kick their bikes on the old bikes, and they don't have trouble getting them to start. Most of the time, if everything else is right, it's all about timing. And I still will have people tell me that, you know, the time them on the, I hear this all the time, time them on the rear cylinder, time them on the rear cylinder. I don't, I time them on the front cylinder, just kind of like I showed you there. And once you set that there, you never have to move it again. It'll start easy, first or second kick, never have to mess with it, and you have a lot of fun. Great motors. Okay, so the next thing I was going to talk about a little bit was the single cylinders. And if you guys have ever followed the Cannonball, we have the 2020 21 Cannonball champion with us, right there, Dave Courier. He rode a 1911 single cylinder without any issues all the way across the continent. So he's had little issues or experience with valve timing and ignition timing on the single cylinder. The single cylinder Harley, and this is all I'm talking about is Harleys, because I don't know about that other brand. I don't know what they do. So you only have, even from 1913 up on a single cylinder, all you have in your cam is a single cam, runs your exhaust. So you have a pinion gear, just like on the twin, this gear right here. And then your cam, instead of having 4 lobes on it like this one, to run everything, you only have 1. Almost every single that I've worked with, and Dave can attest to that, never has the original gears, valves, or pockets in it. It's just they're too rare. They're too hard to find that way. And so when you stick that cam gear in and your pinion gear, I'm going to draw this fancy pinion gear again, and it has that mark. And you pull your piston up, top dead center again. Okay, and you'll have the timing gear, and it'll have that mark on that exhaust cam. Sometimes they don't work lined up. Am I not correct, Dave? Okay. So, and they will give people fits about it on a single cylinder. This doesn't look like a very good piston here. I gotta make it. Okay, so unlike a twin cylinder, a single cylinder does not like valve overlap. It will not run with valve overlap. When that exhaust valve closes, then the exhaust, before the intake valve starts opening, that exhaust valve has to be fully closed. You can start that sequence. There's a lot of play that you can have in that when you're looking at your valves coming up on your cam and on your exhaust valve. You can start it just a little bit later and close it at the very top. You can start it sooner and close it before it gets quite to the top. But there is some variance. So what I'm telling you on the timing when you go to do a single cylinder is when you may have to ignore this mark and stick that cam in there, so when you are coming up on your exhaust stroke, starting, that it is opening and closing within that stroke. And so once you move this one to where you got the valve opening on that stroke and then closing it, and then your piston starts downward, then again, now you've got your cam gear, which unlike, and I was wanting to bring a single cylinder, but then your cam gear on the single is the next one over, and it has a little lever that opens and closes on your push rod or your lifter pin. So once you get the exhaust valve timed and it starts on your downward stroke, you put your intake valve gear will have a cam on it. You put that lifter so that starts to open, not just coming up on your cam, but the valve